Together with our experts Rosalind Booker, Rhonda Hutchinson, Melanie Williamson, and Chris Ziegler. Here is Building Wealth Together on Heaven 97 KHVN.
Well, top of the noon hour to you. Top of the noon hour to you, radio listeners. I'm Roz B. Ask Roz B. Thank you for joining us again for Building Wealth Together, back to the basics. We're empowering lives through building legacies and wealth through what? Credit, real estate. Got to have some money, y'all, or get a loan, right? And insurance. You got to protect those assets. This series, this month, we are talking about real estate investing and legacy wealth building. I tell you, it's really, really popular. The phone has been ringing off the hook. They've really enjoyed our panel speakers. And today we have a couple of great, awesome team members that have joined us, our guest speakers. We will get to introduce them. Today, we're going to be talking about funding real estate investments, building wealth together. If you are joining us for the first time, what is it all about? Well, first of all, you're going to meet us here every first, second, third, and fourth Saturdays of the month. We call it an hour of power, high noon. We are creating a foundation and the pillars that are needed for wealth building. Yes, yes, yes. We're an education and information platform. And we know that we're reaching our local community. We know that hands down because this KHVN family has been here for years. But what is even most heartwarming to know is that we're reaching other regions, other states, cities, globally. Why? Because the digital technology allows you to download the app right now. Yeah, download the app. If you need to be mobile, download the app and you can listen there. Also, you can go to the website for KHVN and you can listen live. We are also on Facebook. So if you haven't joined or liked the page, go to Facebook right now. You can see this beautiful team here. Man. God didn't make no junk, y'all. God did not make no junk. I wish you could see what I can see. Oh, my. Thank you, Lord. Okay, I'm going to get back on topic, y'all. But anyway, go ahead and hop on over to on Facebook, Building Wealth Together Radio. Building Wealth Together Radio. Like the page, follow us, engage with us with your questions, all right? Go to our website, Building Wealth Together, the letter B, the number 2, the letter B.com. That's Building Wealth Together, B2B.com. We got a lot of phone numbers to give out, but today we're going to give you one. You can reach the BWT team at 469-795-1708. 469-795-1708. Now, if you want to call the station with your questions, if you have questions for us or any of the panel guest speakers today, you can dial 972-996-3970. That's 972-996-3970. So without further ado, let's get some introductions going. I'm your host, Roz B. Ask Roz B. My birth name is Rosalind Booker. So I'm the principal broker, CEO of Arbrook Realty. We're a full service real estate company. We're birthing dreams and building legacies. And you know, our mantra today and going forward is we're helping people reclaim, restore, rebuild. Reclaim, restore, rebuild. And I'm gonna punt it to Miss Melanie Michelle, M&M, baby dog. Come on, girl, talk to us.
Roz, I have to follow you every week. It's just, I tell you, and I just expect you put this smile on my face every week. And I'm glad to be here with this amazing team. This has been an amazing journey for the month, and I've learned quite a bit on the investing. So I come from the credit industry. So I work for a company, White Jacobson Associates, and we're an attorney-based consumer credit organization, and we audit for accuracy. So my whole hope to be backed by an amazing company like this is to be able to do community with you guys and be out here on this platform and work with women and their families, just locking arms to just build a stronger foundation. So I'm so glad to be here to build, understand, maintain, protect credit. So glad to be here, Melanie. Melanie Williamson.
Rhonda's a lion, a lion. Come on now. Chris, where you at?
Where you roar at, Chris? I didn't hear that. Was that a puppy or something?
That was a kitty cat.
He don't want to roar today. He ain't gonna roar today.
You have to work on your roar on offline.
Come on, Chris.
Yeah. Happy Saturday, 12 noon to our Heaven 97 listeners. Glad to be here again on today, sharing with you in our investment part 3 series. I'm excited. I am a loan officer, a residential loan officer with PRMG, Paramount Residential Mortgage Group. And I'm excited to be here with my team on today.
All right, put your big stick up, Chris, your paddle, because the principal is here keeping us all together. None other than Zig, y'all.
Yes, my name is Chris Ziegler. I'm with the Ziegler Agency Allstate. I'm an agency owner here in Frisco, Texas. I service the whole state of Texas, and my goal is to make sure I protect you and your assets on all levels, from your life insurance to your home, your auto, if you have commercial business insurance, and even your supplemental stuff like supplemental insurance for your health, and also your long-term care. So I cover a lot more things than that. So I'm Chris Ziegler with the Ziegler Agency, and I'm just looking forward today to hearing from the panel. And people have been saying, Chris, you be answering some awesome questions every week. And the reason I'm answering those are questions I have for myself personally, because I've learned so much. I thought I had everything airtight until I heard some of the panelists speak. Mm-hmm. I said, we got some work to do. And then some people I know who have businesses as well, and told me the same thing. They've been listening and learned a lot. And hey, when you think you got it together, you might not necessarily have it all together.
That's right.
That's right.
But you know what? With all of us together, we can know a whole lot, you know?
Exactly.
So, without further ado, we're going to introduce our guests real quick. And before we get into our presentation and questions and answers, we're going to have Chris pray us out. But Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce Mr. Jesse Jackson?
Well, first and foremost, Jesse Jackson is my brother in Christ, first and foremost, personal friend, customer, and then a fraternity brother too. He's a member of the illustrious Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated like myself, and he's a VP of commercial banking, executive VP of commercial banking at Texas Capital Bank. And I'm not going to say too much, let Jesse kind of tell you a little bit about him and some other things he's doing as well.
All right.
Jesse, you muted.
You're mute, Mr. Jesse.
He's coming, but while he's getting unmuted, I'd like to introduce. Oh, okay, hold on.
I'm muted. I apologize for that.
Oh,
right ahead.
So I am Jesse Jackson. As Chris indicated, I am the Executive Vice President and Head of the Commercial Banking Practice at Texas Capital Bank. We are approximately about 40 billion in size, headquartered in Dallas, Texas, with a footprint that spans the entire U.S. In terms of the verticals that we run. The team that I run is primarily here in Dallas. We're the fastest growing, organically grown bank in the history of community banking, believe it or not. We're based right here in Dallas. And we have a specific focus on working with larger companies to some degree, but we've got specialized verticals where we spend a lot of time working with small business owners, and we have a fantastic community development arm and a CDC where we are focused on investments that we're making in the community. And so I get a chance to work in all those areas. I specifically focus on financial literacy initiatives, really empowering people to save and budget and prepare for home ownership, funding their kids' educations and things like that. But in addition, I also run kind of a separate vertical at our company that is specifically geared toward helping to build strategic partnerships with minority deposit institutions. And when I say that, we're talking specifically about women-owned banks, African-American-owned banks, Asian-owned banks, Hispanic-owned banks, Native American-owned banks. You know, we really have broadened our reach, and I'm excited about the program because especially in the climate today. We've got to do more with supporting our Black banks, and we've got to do more in terms of helping them be collaborative with our communities to fuel economic empowerment in those communities. And it's going to take each and every one of us to do that. So thank you for having me this morning. I'm extremely passionate. I think God has certainly placed me in this role to be a leader in this field, and I hope we can walk away with lessons learned today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Very, very welcome. Thank you so much. And now, as we roll out the red carpet for Miss Ferrell Fellows, I met her recently online. Let me tell you some of the most prominent, best relationships I have made with first meeting a person online. And what I loved about Ferrell is not only, well, she's beautiful, of course, but I love what she is doing in her communities. I've watched some of her videos. I mean, the simplicity of investing. I mean, she takes it from an ABC standpoint and she makes it seem realistic that it's achievable. So I like what she's done up until this point in her life. And I know she is moving fast and furious in the development industry and has some knowledge on creative ways to fund some deals. I just want the world to hear, our listening world to hear from Ferrell today. So Ferrell, you could do a lot better job. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Rosalind. I am so excited to be here and to share with the listeners about how to invest in finance real estate projects. I own a company called Kingdom Legacy, and our mission is to transform communities one property at a time. And really, the Lord showed me a vision of building His kingdom and building our legacy at the same time. And if we're kingdom focused, there's no limit to what we can build as a community. I have the background in corporate America, in corporate finance, accounting, and as a negotiator of corporate assets for multi-billion-dollar companies. And the Lord allowed me to have that experience so that I could take it and bring it back to my community and use it to educate and to really increase the mindset and the perspectives of just how big we can build. I'm excited about teaching real estate, which is really what I focus on. I work with primarily new buyers and new investors, and I take them from a position of having very little understanding in the real estate market and in investing, and I teach them the basics to help build hope in the possibility that you can literally go from knowing nothing about real estate and within a short amount of time be able to get to the position where you can own your community.
That's awesome.
That is amazing. And that's what it's all about. And that word together, that is exponential, and that's where we build momentum. And, I just want to share with the radio listeners, one of the words that God gave me as we signed on today was, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we're bringing heaven to earth today. And here's how, because we're releasing heaven that's inside of us. And when I say releasing heaven, we're releasing that knowledge. We've come together to bring heaven to earth. So I want to circle back around just a few minutes before we go to break. Want to circle back around to Jessie. Jessie, tell us how your financial institution, just start with the basic level, helps people fund their real estate transactions. You're on mute, Jessie.
All right, I'm just gonna keep it off. How about that? So generally, when it comes to real estate transactions, we have a specific focus around working with our mid-sized companies and our small companies, specifically related to their owner-occupied commercial real estate needs. So if you're a manufacturing company and you've got a warehouse facility, tons and tons of equipment, produce your merchandise, we have an interest in in financing those types of projects. And generally speaking, when we look at that, of course, the first component of that is, where the real estate is located, really working to assess what the value of that real estate is, and then looking at kind of the funding stack, right? And when I mention funding stack, I'm specifically talking about how much equity do you as a business owner have to bring to the transaction? Because generally speaking, conventional financial institutions are not going to finance 100% of your acquisition. Generally, they're going to require their customers to bring to the table anywhere from 25 to 35% equity in the transaction. What I mean by equity is cash. You've got to, and sometimes equity can be in the form of other assets, but let's just use cash for this example today. You're going to have to come to the transaction with cash because the bank is generally going to look to provide financing if that specific asset appraises, right? With up to a loan to value of probably 65 to 70% is where banks are traditionally comfortable in terms of adding leverage to a company's balance sheet. Okay, so
okay. Hey Jesse, let's let the people digest what you just said.
Okay.
We're gonna pray in, and then we're gonna take a short break, and then we're gonna come back to you for you to further explain that. Okay, Chris, would you lead us?
Okay. Heavenly Father, we first and foremost thank you for letting us be allowed to see another glorious day, dear God. And like Roz said, let thy kingdom come, be done like it is here in heaven as it is on earth, dear God. And we just ask you to guide us on a day-to-day basis and guide our paths to uplift you and glorify your name, to do your will, and to help people understand what their divine intervention is for their lives through your Son, Jesus Christ. These are blessings we ask in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And now we'll hear from one of our co-sponsors, Superior Abstract and Title. We'll be right back.
Superior Abstract and Title is not your typical title company. We make our clients feel number one by answering every call and working around the client's schedule. We will close the customer at any location they choose with no cost added for this service. In addition, we are a 100% woman-owned business. Contact Superior today at 214-705-1310 or superiorabstract.com.
And I want to give a shout out to Superior HVAC Company. It's a residential commercial AC installation, maintenance, service, and repair company. They do a phenomenal job, and the owner is Walter Pickney. And actually, he came by my office yesterday to service my commercial, and he does my home as well. And his number is 469-636-0945. That's Superior and Walter Pickney.
And I've got a great sponsor, Brian Jennings. He's the president of Next Generation Payroll. If you're a small business or startup and you need some information, hey, they provide payroll services, marketing consulting, HR consulting, and you know what? They're located right here in Dallas. They can be reached at 214-396-2200 or reach out to Brian at ngpayroll.com.
Awesome. And if you're just joining us, again, we're building wealth together. Back to the basics. We have a couple of great speakers today, Mr. Jesse Jackson and Ferrell Fellows, and we are talking about funding real estate investments. If you want to reach us here at the station, dial 972-996-3970. That's 972-996-3970. Hop on over to Facebook if you want to engage with us, ask us questions there. That page is Building Wealth Together Radio, Building Wealth Together Radio. So Jesse, punting it back to you, you were eloquently talking about that capital stack. And I don't think a lot of people really realize what that stack consists of. Sure. So it sounded like they needed to at least have 30 to 35% of their own skin in the game. Is that what you were saying?
I think that's an important point to bring back up, because I think oftentimes we enter these transactions having not thought through what their skin in the game actually is. And in our world, when you look at, putting on senior debt onto a deal or financing the purchase of a building, the first thing that we're going to look at is the actual skin in the game that the actual borrower has. Number one. Number two, we really want to dig a little deeper into how much additional guarantor support can this particular borrower bring to the table if the transaction gets in trouble. We don't think out on the curve enough around, okay, so if this deal does, if we're facing some challenges like we are today during COVID-19, a lot of businesses that have real estate transactions on the book are starting to have some challenges. And so now they're having to think about that secondary and tertiary source of repayment for that loan. Okay, and so that's the reason why banks are so concerned on the front end. How much skin do you have in the game? What the guarantor support looks like, and if we get into some trouble or see a downturn in the economy, what's our secondary and tertiary way to get the debt service paid, right?
And Jesse, I have a quick question for you in regards to that secondary and tertiary way of getting that money. Do you guys help them to find ways to do that, or do you make suggestions? What do you do in those particular situations?
Generally, during the underwriting process, we'll do a lot of work, to understand the underlying operating business that's generating the cash flow that's ultimately going to pay back the loan, right? Mm-hmm. So the cash flow from those business activities are always going to be the primary source of repayment. Secondary source of repayment is generally looking at that guarantor, looking at their personal wherewithal, to suggest that if this deal goes bad, can you write a check to right size the transaction? And then that tertiary or third type of repayment is liquidation of the asset itself, mm-hmm. The equipment, the building, everything, involved in the transaction to ultimately pay that debt service back. So that's worst case scenario, as you can imagine. But those primary and secondary sources of repayment are critical to even getting the conversation started at the institution.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one other thing that I wanted to mention, is as you think about equity, also think about kind of what the interest rate environment looks like, and really how you want to structure a deal with respect to the repayment. The amount that you repay every month, mm-hmm. Amortization of that particular credit, and really how that impacts the cash flow of the business or your personal cash flow if you're doing this as an individual and buying some type of speculative real estate. You really have to be mindful of that kind of thing when at the front end, again, before you even go down the road of attempting to acquire a piece of property.
Awesome. Wow, this is valuable information. Ms. Ferrell, so talk to us about some of the funding opportunities and how you've been a part of creatively helping people finance their real estate transactions.
Absolutely. Some of the things that Jesse mentioned are for many young professionals or those who are new to investing, I would call them barriers to entry. They have a great idea, they have a passion to invest, but they do not have their ducks in a row to be able to cross through the doors to be able to get the financing that they need to buy the building or start the business, whatever their vision is. And what I like about this team here is that it's representative of almost every piece of the puzzle that you need to be able to get through that barrier of entry. Some of the things that Jesse mentioned were, you've got to have the credit needed to be able to qualify for the loan. You have to have a pro forma and a business plan. So you need someone with the financial background to help take your idea and put it on paper in a quantitative way that makes sense for a financial institution to trust you with their funding. You have to understand real estate and how it will perform and how it will be able to pay back the mortgage. And these are all things that the resources are available to you here on this team. And there are other people probably in your network that you can find that can help you put those pieces of the puzzle together. But the one piece of the puzzle that's most difficult for people is the cash. Where do I come up with the down payment? How do I find the equity to be able to put that 20 to 35% down?
Right, that part.
That I've struggled with personally as a hopeful investor and developer. And so I have successfully been able to teach new investors how to find a network of people within their own community to create partnerships for investing. So the number one thing you need is trust and unity. You have to kind of take your vision from a singular, like, this is my idea, I want to own everything, to, you know, who's a partner that shares a similar passion that can move forward in this vision with me. Sometimes those people can be silent partners or investors who are already successful in their career and are just looking for a great opportunity to invest in. It may be friends or family or someone, business colleague, who can go in on a deal with you and pool capital to be able to come up with the equity needed. Jesse may be able to speak a little bit more about how partnerships impact financing. But I have one example of two young ladies who attended a Bible study with me. And in my Bible study, we started talking about investing in real estate. And those two young ladies decided to become partners and buy their first property that would become a rental property. And they took their joint knowledge. One was a tax professional, the other was an architect. And they were able, over the course of about 2 years, to acquire 3 properties that they renovated and rented out. And now they have a portfolio of properties where they're moving on to development. And that's just one example of how to get over the initial hurdles of lack of cash to be able to get into the bank's doors. Sometimes you have to find like-minded people to unify with, and you have to reach out to your network to be able to get the pieces of the puzzle together so that you can cross those barriers.
I have a question for both of you. With both of you guys, if y'all can answer it. I'm sorry, I had a question for both of you guys. Can you utilize grants in order to do investments, or is that something we can do?
I think that's a really important question, because there are available grant funds to help fund real estate investments specifically, but generally that's tied to a specific area of the city, maybe that really needs that additional kind of subsidy, that additional support to attract investors to that specific part of the city.
So Jesse, would that grant being awarded to whatever entity, is that considered part of the stack?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when I use the term capital stack, and again, that's just kind of my term, when I think about all the pieces to the funding, and Ferrell's comment about, friends and family, and, oftentimes a lot of our small business clients, and keep in mind, these small business clients become large, mid-sized businesses, over time. And so we really like to partner with them when they're in the startup phase as well. But they generally have utilized their 401ks or other types of retirement assets. They've gone to their closest friends and suggested to them that, hey, I put this business plan together. I've got a solid roadmap to success. I've been thoughtful around the pro forma of this business over the next 3 to 5 years, and I really think I have something special here. Would you partner up with me? 90% of the startup businesses that we see, that's exactly how they go about starting to build that funding stack. Because generally speaking, outside of SBA type lending programs, most of those businesses have to have a pretty sustainable track record of financial performance over a 2 to 3 year period of time before a bank would really consider, a conventional form of financing, right? And so the grant piece to that, of course, Roz, is important, because grants can fill some of those gaps. You may have some funding, you may have private equity dollars flowing into the deal, you may have friends and family that are willing to contribute, and you still may have a gap. And if you can get creative and find grant funds to kind of fill that gap, I think that's genius.
So let's dispel the myth or attest to the truth here about these no money down investments. Does that exist?
Not in my world, but I live by the philosophy that if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good.
It is, right. Probably is.
And so, I've got a daughter that's, a millennial daughter that's in her early 20s, and she approaches me all the time with these, just, crazy, ideas around, being, because she's a young entrepreneur herself. And she says, well, Dad, I can do this with no money down, or I can get into this without having to have any upfront, working capital. And my suggestion to her is always, the devil's in the details. Make sure you truly understand what it is you're doing, because generally speaking, there's no free lunch. Nothing's for free.
I get it. Ferrell, I have a question for you. So I'd like to sum up what you said. So the asking advantage is awesome. To just ask, to formulate partnerships and just ask. So what do you feel if someone really wanted to go to their friends, their families, or others with like minds? What are some of the things that people are looking for? How should you vet that person? What is it that you're looking for to say, I'm willing to partner with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. For one, you need to take your idea out of your head and put it on paper in a well thought out way that seems like you understand the beginning, the middle, and the end, and you have multiple contingency plans for how you will operate your business or operate your real estate investment so that it will be successful. You also have to be personally credible. So your friends and family know that if you borrowed $50 and didn't pay it back, then it's highly unlikely that they'll draw out of their 401k to help you.
You mean we can't go get $15,000? Being paid at 50 back? Okay, I get it.
No. If that's why it's super important when you reach out to your network that you are actually honoring the agreements that you made. If you had someone co-sign for a car, there's absolutely no reason why you should ever miss a payment or not be communicating with the person that extended their credit on your behalf. Because trust and unity is necessary to most times get from one level to the next. Personal credibility and having a solid plan. That's my answer.
Awesome.
I think I've got one other thought to that, because I think it's so important that we recognize how important the credit piece is to this, because your credit again ties directly to your credibility. And whether you owe a family member or you've borrowed a small loan from a small community bank or whatever the case may be, repayment and building a sustainable track record of repaying, money that you borrow is so important in this process. And I understand in some of our communities, we have more untraditional credit sources, and so we're working hard, in the banking space to find ways to give those individuals who may not have credit depth, an opportunity to use the fact that they paid their rent on time for the past 15 years. They paid their utility bills on time over the past few years, to try to work with the credit agencies and the bank regulators to give individuals in certain communities credit for those things. But at the end of the day, the foundational principles of that are the same. If you borrow money, pay it back, build that credibility, build that history, because it's going to create opportunities for you to do more down the line if you actually need to borrow money again.
So I'd like to ask Ferrell, how do you feel about hard money loans and lending?
But first of all, explain it. Some people might not know what that means, so explain that first.
Ferrell, can you explain hard money lending?
Yes, a hard money loan, it would be considered private lending from a bank that doesn't necessarily have to follow federal guidelines for lending. They can be discriminatory or choiceful in who they lend to based on the location of the project, the credibility of the borrower, or whatever other rules or guidelines that they set. They typically have easier access to funding at a higher cost. So they charge interest points up front, but would probably allow, under the terms or structure of the purchase, you to borrow the purchase price plus the cost of renovations in one package loan, with you putting little to no money down, but paying fees on the loan.
I have a question. It could be both of you, Ferrell and Mr. Jesse. Do you feel that going to maybe a minority-owned bank, or then rather than maybe our traditional, other what we call traditional bank, may be a better choice for, let's say, our first-time investors or those investors who are just getting off to that investment journey? What are your thoughts on that? Or do you have a point of thought on that?
I've of course, I certainly would recommend that we rally around and support our minority banks, specifically African American chartered banks. If I understand your question, is the question, should we be using our minority banks, or do we have a better opportunity of getting access to credit at a minority bank?
I think both. Both.
Okay.
I think it's a round two question. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I think there are some benefits to if you're in that community and you want to borrow money from a bank that's in your community, and you got a solid plan, you've done all that other work that we've talked about on this platform today, and you go into that institution and you're pretty confident that you're a good credit risk. I would suggest that you probably have a higher likelihood of getting approval from that bank that's in that market than if you were to take that opportunity to a larger money center bank like a Wells or a B of A or something like that, or even another community bank that's not directly in that market, that's not as familiar with that particular area of the city. So I do think that there's some advantages to that, and it also, to my other point, it allows the bank to then invest, because banks are investors in these projects as well. You have to realize that. The bank feels more comfortable investing in that particular project in the community. It also helps to create jobs and create sustainable businesses, create a sustainable tax base. So they want to invest in those projects, right? And so, but again, take care of your business on the front end. If you have access to a minority bank in your local community, I would recommend you certainly partner with.
Okay, great.
What are some of the scores that you're seeing of individuals that are coming in and being successful? And, what is that threshold? If somebody right now is listening and they're thinking, well, let me get my information and take it in and apply, what should they be thinking about in relationship to their credit? Where should they be?
Ferrell, you may be able to take that one a little better than me, because I'll tell you, and I'll shoot you guys straight, because a lot of these business owners that that have built significant wealth and have been successful at acquiring assets and building these unbelievable companies, their credit is not always good. When you look at their credit scores, I mean, they're literally in the high fives, low to mid sixes in terms of credit score, but because they built liquidity on their balance sheet and they have access to cash and different things like that, they can have access to things that they need. So I'm probably not the best to speak to that, just because I don't work with consumers as much. But Ferrell, you do. I mean, is it 650 to 750?
I'll say two quick things. I have a very successful real estate investor who owns about 90 properties, and they told me personally they've never had a credit score over a 600.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that should limit any mental barriers people have about what they can and cannot do. However, if you walk into a traditional bank to get a conventional loan, your credit score requirements will be set by each individual bank. So if one bank tells you no, go find another one. I would encourage you that regardless of what your score says, your credit profile is most important. So there should be a history of use of credit, paying bills back on time. Most times, if you've had something major like a bankruptcy that has been, you've had that judgment removed, you've dealt with the issues of your past and you show consistent history, banks will work with you, or they'll help explain the guidelines to help you get to where you want to go. So I would definitely advise you to work with credit repair to get your score at least to a 640 at least, and to make sure that you're showing consistent credit history in a positive way.
Awesome.
Is that
So
is that also good car credit?
Good car credit. Oh, they'll take you. They'll take you with a 480 on a car with a 21% interest. Lord.
Right, that's the key, the interest rate. Yes.
So one question, and we're going to go to break. So Ferrell, what are you seeing in terms of people who want to start investing in single family residences? How much money do they have to have down?
Well, that's a great question. Most people don't realize that when you buy your first home, even if it's your primary residence, you have just made your first investment in real estate.
Yeah, talking my language.
Young professionals who are qualified, great credit, income, and simply wait to buy a home because they're not ready to settle down. And they're missing their huge opportunity to build equity as a young professional, even if they don't live in the house. So I would encourage people to make your first investment your primary residence. I have lenders right now that will help you buy a single family home up to $550,000 with no money down. Yes. And I heard what Jesse said about his daughter. Well, you can't use some things, if it's no money down, it's too good to be true. Yeah, I really helped probably 15 people this year buy a house with no money down. I'm able to negotiate their closing costs sometimes to be paid by the seller. I have one example of a young single woman who bought a 4-bedroom home, and she came to closing getting a $800 refund. So buy a home, and then once you buy a home, convert that home into a rental property and buy another home. I have another young lady at the age of 25 who bought 2 to 3 properties before the age of 25 simply by buying a home every year. And she was earning less than $30,000 a year in income. So I've seen people do it. There's no excuse. And your credit score at that level can be a 600 or greater.
Great. Hey, y'all, let's go to a break real quick and hear from our co-sponsors, and we'll come right back to our conversation.
Abstract and Title is not your typical title company. We make our clients feel number one by answering every call and working around the client's schedule. We will close the customer at any location they choose with no cost added for this service. In addition, we are a 100% woman-owned business. Contact Superior today at 214-705-1310 or superiorabstract.com.
Well, hey, listeners, if you're just tuning in, welcome to Building Wealth Together, Back to the Basics. Hey, we're going to be mentioning Brian Jennings. He is the president of Next Generation Payroll. They provide payroll services, marketing consulting, HR consulting, and they're located in Dallas. Brian and his team could be reached at 214-396-2200 or at ngpayroll.com. If you're a small business or a startup, reach out to Brian Jennings today.
And guys, I want to talk about Superior Air. Superior Air is a superior HVAC company. They specialize in AC installation, maintenance and service, and repair. And their number is 469-636-0945, and they service the whole DFW Metroplex.
Awesome. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you have reached Building Wealth Together, Back to the Basics. Woo! I just made up a word, y'all. It's getting gooder and gooder and gooder. Talking about these phenomenal speakers and all of the wealth that they are sharing and releasing. They're releasing heaven. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Yes, indeed.
Shame on us if we do not do anything with this information.
That's what I'm talking
about. Yes, shame on us. Shame on us. Want to take?
Can I make one additional thought, one additional comment?
Go ahead.
Ferrell's last comment about single family home ownership. I just wanted to share a personal story, if that's okay.
Sure. Let's give our listeners an opportunity to call in. 972-996-3970. Again, that's 972-996-3970. Y'all call in if you have any questions to ask our panel of speakers. Go ahead, Jesse.
So I just wanted to share, the fact that, that, my credit score has not always been what it is today, even though I've been in banking as long as I have. I had to learn some hard lessons, but I was able to buy my first home, and which ultimately required me to put very little money down. I didn't have the strongest credit. I think I had to do an FHA loan, and Ferrell, you may share with the listeners what that means exactly. But I was able to put less money down versus a conventional loan, and I ultimately ended up converting that particular property to a rental property. So I had a person lease that property from me for over 7 years. She ultimately ended up purchasing the property. So we built all that equity for 7 years in that property. She ended up buying that property from me, and I ended up not only recouping my original investment, but being able to share in that equity appreciation over that 7-year period of time. So to Ferrell's point, always be thinking about your first opportunity to invest in a single family real estate, because that you are again investing in real estate at that point.
I got a question for both of you guys. If either one of you can answer, both of you can answer it. When it comes to commercial real estate, do you ever require companies or individuals or people doing those type of things that have bonds?
Sometimes you can do bond issues to help finance certain types of municipal properties generally. So it's commercial real estate, but it's generally tied to some type of municipality. Okay. That's just been my experience. It's rare, unless you're a very, very large company, that you're going to issue bonds to help, with any growth initiatives around expansion, needing larger facilities, need to acquire other.
Ferrell, what has your experience been with that, Ferrell? Have you had any issues or situations where you had to use bonds for anything that you're doing?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Want to take a break? We have a question from Facebook. Britton Boyd asked, what would be your suggestion or directions to an individual wanting to start their journey in investments? So if you want to take that and just kind of recap real quickly.
Yes, the simplest way, in my opinion, if you don't already own a home, would be to purchase a home. You would need to have a minimum credit score for FHA loan. It's marketed at 580, and for a conventional loan at 600. So my strategy for you would be to purchase a home, live in it for 1 year, whatever the lender requirement is, and then convert that to a income generating rental property. And you can utilize those same programs to buy your next home that you can live in, and continue that pattern until you're tired of moving. And if you want to go into some other sort of business space, retail, multifamily, then you might want to execute a strategy of finding a partner that can help pull capital to come up with the down payment needed as equity.
Awesome. What is the answer, Jesse, if someone is getting into commercial real estate and want to invest? What do you recommend?
I mean, a lot of the things that Ferrell mentioned apply whether you're doing it individually or as a business. I mean, I would take it a step further to really, really suggest that, that you really master the idea of saving and budgeting, right? As you start thinking about, going into these transactions, having spent a lot of time building up cash reserves, because oftentimes, the front end of this thing, you're going to have to fund a lot of that out of your own pocket. And then also being mindful that you need to go into these transactions having worked to reduce your personal debt load so that you don't have as many obligations on a monthly basis. And then making sure that you have become, masterful at budgeting and making sure that you are mindful of your spending at all times, because budgeting really kind of ties to the ability for you to save and build those cash reserves and reduce any debt that you have today. So the same basic philosophies apply, But I just wanted to add too that you got to do a lot of that work on the front end, and get really, really good at that.
Okay. I know we've talked about a lot of success stories, and I will keep saying this because it's my story. I can't really talk about how successful I am becoming unless I can share about the pitfalls. And because success is not always just a bow and arrow. It's a jagged edge, like a lightning bolt. And we have our ups, we have our downs. Can you both share what people should not do? Like, have you seen any pitfalls that people who want to invest should get around deliberately? I mean, do you have any real life stories without naming anybody?
I would probably suggest things that you shouldn't do. You never should misrepresent what it is who you are, what your business philosophy is, and don't misrepresent that to your investors. Don't misrepresent that to banks. Again, spend the time building the right type of foundation so you can go into these discussions.
Don't lie.
Don't lie. Don't
Don't
lie.
lie.
Don't lie. Just be
Disclosure, full disclosure, right?
right.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. So don't misrepresent any of those things. And and again, don't you should never at any time take the cash reserves and other things that you've built that I've talked about and go and make other investments that are misaligned with your investment strategy on this specific project without first praying about it, doing some soul searching, talking to your other investors. And if you do have bank financing, talk to your bank about it. If you pivot away from your specific strategy that they financed, that could be a big problem for you.
I'm gonna chime in real quick too. Listen to your professionals, because being in insurance, I work with all these people, whether it be like Rhonda Mortgage, Roz, and real estate, Melanie, and doing the credit. And I know I had a couple of situations this week where people didn't listen to those people doing what they told them to do. They always say, don't buy anything, don't purchase anything. And then I had these people calling me up saying, hey, we need to try to restructure the insurance because they did X, Y, and Z. So the pitfall is listen to the professionals. When they tell you to do something, make sure that you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good advice.
Ferrell, did you have any examples?
I would say just do your research and really understand what it is that you want to do, because knowledge, they say, is power.
Mm-hmm.
And without knowledge, the people perish. So, really seek God and pray and get understanding, and He'll lead you to the research and the wisdom and the resources and the people that can educate you on what you want to do, without you just jumping out there with a hope and a dream and nothing to fall back on.
They say faith over foolishness.
Faith over foolishness, right?
Yes,
Faith over
indeed.
fear.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, this has definitely been a phenomenal show. Facebook is just blowing up with comments about how great this insight is, and this is great information. And again, we appreciate what you guys have shared. It's been invaluable. But knowledge is just knowledge until we do something with it. So I pray that every listener has an action plan behind this, and that you charge your heart, put a demand upon your heart to do something. I know I am. I just am not here spilling out and giving out and giving. God has a promise. He has an inheritance. He has destiny for us. And I don't know if y'all can see on Facebook behind me. And for those who are listening, I have this beautiful picture that is a landing that goes out to the sea, and a mural that says, I believe in miracles. And I want to tell each and every one of you, you are the miracle. You are the miracle. God wants to release you. He wants to release the miracle that's inside of you. Remember, we said today, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we're going to make a round robin. We'll start with our BWT team. Actually, we'll start with our panel speakers, starting with you, Jesse. If people want to reach you, please give your contact information, and then Ferrell, you can give yours, and then we'll do our round robin.
Absolutely. Feel free to give me a call directly. My mobile number is 214-918-0409, and I can be reached via email at Jesse Jackson, JESSE JACKSON 13 @gmail.com.
I can be reached. I'm Ferrell Fellows. I'll spell that. That's FERRELL, Ferrell Fellows. I can be reached on Facebook or Instagram at Fifi Fellows. That's FEFE Fellows. I can be reached by email at info@kingdomlegacycompany.com. And I'll give out my business line, which is 214-937-9526.
Awesome. So the person, Miss Patra Payne, I pray that you got their contact information, and you can ask that question. What advice do you give for the self-employed? What advice do you give for the self-employed? So I hope you jotted down their numbers. And if each of you, Jesse and Ferrell, would go to our Building Wealth Together page and engage with the people there and answer their questions as well, we greatly would appreciate that. And thank you so much, KHVN family, for giving us just a couple of more minutes. We started a little late, so y'all don't log off just yet. We're going to give you some information. So I'm Roz B, Ask Roz B, Principal Broker, CEO of Arbrook Realty, where we birth dreams and build legacies. And we're doing it. We're doing it, y'all. Rhonda and I are proud to have a constituent, a listener that believed in her dream, and her now was now, and she's now got the keys to her house. And she did too, Ferrell, have that story. She didn't come to the table with a dime. It was zero on that closing statement. So it is happening. There's no dream left behind when we wake up and do something about it, y'all. So you can reach me at 972-679-9311. Again, that's 972-679-9311. Melanie?
Yes, Melanie Williams. They call me Melanie Michelle on this radio show. And there is no excuse to get your credit profile together. There's no excuse to take a look at your current situation and lock arms with us and people in your community to build wealth through credit, education, credit restoration, real estate, insurance, mortgage lending. We're just excited to be on this platform. You can reach me for any credit question. You can reach me at 469-403-8394, and that's 469-403-8394. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, real quick. Okay, before I give my round table, I think, Ferrell, did you have one more thing that you wanted to say?
Oh, I did, but go ahead. And
no, go ahead. You can have my round table.
We have a few extra minutes. Actually, yeah, we got 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I just wanted to just inform the listeners that we are in a season of the wealth transfer, and be very mindful of the words that you speak and the words that you hear that will tell you the opposite. You will hear things about the economy going into a depression and jobs, people losing jobs, but be very careful of the things that you speak and that you take in and hear and believe, because what God is speaking is that for his children, we will thrive in this season.
That's
and
right.
Actually a strategy to transfer wealth.
Yes.
So I would advise everyone to read Genesis 47 about the strategies that God gave Joseph to run an economy in the midst of a famine, and how he used that famine, or allowed that famine, to transfer the wealth to his people.
You better preach. You better preach, girl.
I just want to encourage everyone as we go to the end of this year, don't believe what you see. Seek God and hear him, and get the strategies for investing, and position yourself, because land will become very cheap.
Yes.
In position to buy and to build in this next season.
Amen.
I wish you close out with that.
Chris, provide your information, because I'm about to run off of this show.
Well, I'm Chris Ziegler with the Ziegler Agency Allstate, and I can be reached at 214-870-4269. You can call me or text me at that number, or you can reach me on Facebook as well.
Roz, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Ms. Roz. You're on mute.
Okay, that's all we have time for today, y'all. Thank you so much for joining KHVN's Building Wealth Together. We'll see you next week where we'll be talking to, yes, Miss June Jenkins, the Collin County NAACP, and Mr. Murphy Cheatham. They will be talking about legacy wealth building as it pertains to the history and how we can overcome some obstacles. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Oh, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care. God
Building Wealth
bless.
Together.
Thank you, guys.
Be sure to follow this program on Facebook and Instagram. And for more information, call 469-795-1708. Tune in every first, second, third, and fourth Saturday for Building Wealth Together on Heaven 97 KHVN.
Here's the deal. I want you